A seed is never big, but it has the capacity to generate the big that you want, because people who go through hardships are forced to think. Most successful people are very happy to help others. I know people fear, people are mean, are busy, but genuinely successful people, they will be very, very happy to help you. I was disappointed to learn that there are no secrets. It is just the simple disciplines that we do every day that make the difference, whether one is going to progress in life or not. Many people suffer loss because they are looking for get-rich-quick schemes. Unless you're a thief or you're lucky to inherit your parents' property, if you're going to be as rich as your father or your mother, you probably need as much time as they did. You're not going to achieve what they achieved in 40 years in 2 years. In our modern day, there's a lot of easy comfort. Growing up, for me to be entertained, it was a struggle. But now entertainment is just on your phone. Data is cheap. At 1,000, 2,000, you can buy some data, entertain yourself. So there are many distractions that are facilitating comfort. In the end, if you take that path of least resistance, then you can only complain how things are not working out. When you look at compounding, it starts off slowly and keeps building momentum. That can be money, that can be knowledge, that can be experience.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome here to another episode of the podcast on Uganda. You will notice we are zen. We just had a beautiful prayer for my guest, Elijah Omagor, and it's so amazing because it's the first time we ever had our guest pray for us. So thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I know we are young, the patriots are young, they are curious, hungry for knowledge. And our guest today, Elijah, he is always in the business of helping you invest and make your investment prosper as well. So we are quite excited to hear what he has in stock for us today. What can we do with our investments and how can they prosper? And I'm very humble because he groomed me as a young professional at Nile Breweries. I was placed in his department at the very start in corporate affairs, and it was such a beautiful experience because they let me spread my wings and explore my potential. So it's now nice to have you, the patriot, soak up on some of the knowledge he's bringing us today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Isn't it nice? How long has it been?
I think it's almost a decade.
Almost. And he has taken turns. You have been in banks, you have been in the beverage industry, now you're under investment, but he is a legal by profession. I asked him this question earlier, how he balances finance and legal, but then he seems they are intrinsically intertwined. So how do you balance these two?
I think I like to look at my profession as existing to help and empower people. So if you're a lawyer, you do not have legal skills for your own benefit, you're using them for the benefit of your clients. The same with finance. How we manage financial resources is to help people use their finances responsibly to grow. So I don't see an inconsistency between law and finance. Both are platforms to help people grow, to get to a better day and a better future.
Oh, that's nicely put. Because if you think for small businesses, these are the kind of businesses, MSME, these are what the patriots have. And the majority of Ugandans, it's quite interesting to know that, okay, we need a lawyer for this. And if it's incorporating a company or even just for knowing how your business is working, you still need legal advice, but it would be even better if you have financial advice with it. So it works well, you say.
It does.
Now, just to start our episode, it would be nice to start with what's happening today. There's a case now that is hot topic in WhatsApp groups, and people are wondering. We were just talking about it now with a producer that, oh my God, this gentleman might go free because we didn't have evidence. What are you guys talking about, especially legally? Is that also top of mind, or do you already know how it works? This is a gentleman who murdered 3 babies at a kindergarten. Or 4 babies, yeah.
It's been very sensational, that the community had wanted to lynch him, he was rescued, and now even within the Uganda Law Society, there is that debate on whether the prosecution should have been handled in the community. That the court has taken the prosecution to Gaba, not outside the normal court premises. So understandably, there's a lot of debate, there's a lot of emotion, but ultimately, from a legal perspective, every accused is innocent until proven guilty. And that is what the judge is supposed to be looking into and determine his guilt or innocence. I think the sub judice rule still applies, that we should not over debate a matter before court.
It was nice to lay that context, because there's a lot, especially because populations are quite gullible, and because we want to help people make the right decisions. And that's why we bring on leaders like yourself who know things better than those who don't. And in that way, then people are able to make better decisions in choosing our leaders, make better decisions in education, options, healthcare. But because we are informed, we have that knowledge that will then get us in the middle class economy by 2040. So welcome to the podcast. That was a nice primer into this discussion. So now to the real stuff. I'm curious. Elijah here has an initiative called Connect Initiatives, and obviously because you guys are young people, I thought we should not bring this conversation to you and know how to make your investments prosper. But what are you realizing in this landscape? Well, how is it like? We have been told we are not investors, we are not savers, and we have also been told capital is within here, we have the money, we just need to save it. The government is borrowing because we are not saving and things like that. But from where you see, how is it like?
It's an interesting landscape. Like in any society, there are those who seem to be doing well and those who seem to be struggling. But I think, speaking financially, my experience has been that finance is like a seed. For those who read the Bible, there are 2 interesting scriptures in the Bible. One is in Isaiah 55, verse 10, and the other is in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 10. But both of them talk about God giving the seed to the sower and bread to the eater. In other words, we all have a seed, but you make a decision whether you're going to eat the seed or to sow it. And the beauty about the concept of a seed is that a seed is normally small. So when you hear people say we do not have enough, it's just that they may be mistaking that whole thing. A seed is never big, but it has the capacity to generate the big that you want. So in our space here in Uganda, there are those, even from the little that they have, they are responsibly using it, they are growing it, and you see progress. But you also see people who have a lot, but they are wasting it. They lack priorities. So at the end of the day, I think it's about the individual.
Where do you think that stems?
Part of it is historical. Again, looking at the patriots, one of the things you'll encounter, I'm sure you, Patricia, when you speak to your parents and uncles and aunties, they'll tell you how their days, they used to walk all these miles to school.
Yes.
So there are hardships our parents went through that made them resilient. They made them wish to make a difference in life. No wonder most of them have been successful. Unfortunately, because they had made it in life, they've tended to raise children who are no longer resilient because we found everything ready. If you ask your mom, for example, you find that there are many milestones that they achieved later, which for you, you've probably achieved much earlier. That causes two things: that for someone who is serious, like you, that gives you a great foundation from which to grow, because you're now standing on the foundation that your parents are prepared and you're able to leap even further than they did. But to another person, that can cause them to become lazy. They find that they no longer need to work hard because everything is there. They are not struggling. You know that someone can even survive. They don't need to look for a job. They will just come back home and they are looked after. That is the challenge we are finding, that it is historical. Secondly, you know that at least in Uganda, the young people are the generation that have not really suffered with war. I know we had a bit of insurgency in northern Uganda. They've had a fairly good life. But that is the problem with good times, that if you're not careful, good times may make you lazy, because people who go through hardships are forced to think. You see it again from our environment, that part of the reason why we are very lax is that it's very difficult to die of hunger in Uganda. You just walk out there, pick a mango and eat. But our colleagues who come from harsh environments, like Japan, for example, you'll see that they are forced to be innovative. So there is a much broader context, but having said all that, I think the crux of this podcast is that at the end of the day, it's about your individual choices. We can't lament and say this, my parent, the economy, the what. In the end, at least what we see is that there is evidence that those who have made effort have actually progressed. And those who have just taken life as it comes have struggled.
Now, there's probably a patriot who is watching, who is listening, and they want to be more intentional, because you have given us a distinct picture between the ones who actually have made opportunities out of their circumstances and those who are also squandering it. I wonder, for some young person who has something or could have something and sees the opportunity, how should they take the step to be intentional? I know you're also big on intentions, because you talked about the seed. Yes, the systems might exist or might not. How do we start practically?
I'll begin this way. I'll use you as an example. I saw you as a little girl. I think you were at the university.
Yes, I was.
But one of the things that I have appreciated about you, and as I've seen you go through life, is the intention with which you use partnerships, collaborations, and mentorships. Many young people will be stuck because they want to do things alone. But when you're young, you're young. Sometimes actually you're very intelligent, but what you lack is the experience and the structure to bring out your talents and your skills. For someone who wants to be intentional, one of the great things to do is to put themselves in a community or an environment which brings that out. That is not a complex thing. Sometimes it is something as easy as getting other like-minded people and forming an investment club, incorporating a company. That in of itself gives you a structure with which to work. One of the things that we do not utilize very much is the power of mentors. In my own life, I have benefited a lot from mentors. And this is the thing which people miss about mentors. Most successful people are very happy to help others. I know people fear, people are mean, are busy, but genuinely successful people, they glory in their success. And because they glory in their success, those who have gotten success the right way, they will be very, very happy to help you. I've been helped by people whom I never imagined would even have time to sit with me for 1 minute. But you find that the person, as responsible as they are, they can sit with me for 2 hours and they are downloading knowledge. And those are things that young people can make use of. And if you're out there and you're blessed, you have your parents alive, you have uncles who are alive, don't just beg them for money. Utilize their experience to actually start from where they stopped. To answer your question is that you create structure by adding a component more than just yourself.
Community.
Yes, community.
And which you actually are a proponent of, especially encouraging people to invest. There was a time back in the years when it was very common for people to invest in SACCOs and Niginas. Is that happening for the youth?
Yeah, actually, I've seen, even in my work, there are many investment clubs of young people that I see. So it is happening. But also, I'm not naive to know that many people have also suffered in groups. I know people will tell you that we collected money and someone ran away with it. If that has happened to you, you've taken the wrong lesson from it. Just because you've suffered in a group setting doesn't mean that you withdraw. Because I'm old enough to know that you're likely to succeed with others than when you are alone. And also Jesus has answered that question in the script. Jesus said that if you do not want to suffer loss, invest in heaven where there are no moths, where there are no thieves, where there is no rust. What that basically means is that once you are investing here on earth, there are risks. We are not blind to those risks. There are risks, but the lesson you get from those risks is that when you're dealing with people, be very mindful about managing the risk. Don't just trust Patricia. Make sure that even as we are putting our money together, there are risk management mechanisms. And these days, those are very easy to manage. You can have an account in the bank, which is controlled by more than one person. So one person doesn't just wake up and run away with your money. At least let them have to connive. There are many other ways, but the key thing to learn is that even as young people, when you come together, that synergy is likely to drive you further than when you try to do things alone.
Absolutely. I like that also previous guests have re-echoed what you've just shared, that today it's quite easy. There's information available everywhere. So you really shouldn't struggle in isolation because there are credible businesses that have established themselves. For you to be conned, it's probably because you lacked someone to hold your hand or you didn't tell anybody and you really just went in it blindly.
Like a sheep to the slaughter.
Yeah, like a sheep to the slaughter. Also, before we go any further, if you look at the work you have done, the teachings you share, they give analogies or reference to the Bible. I wonder how has the scripture shaped how you operate in your work life?
Well, my fundamental belief is that every human being is a spiritual being. I think for you to progress in life is that your work must be guided by your belief. And for me as a Christian, I don't see any separation between my work and my beliefs because what I'm doing, I see it as a calling. That is the grace God has put upon my life, and I am simply.
That's wonderful. Now you're going to tell us what we should know. What are those things that the young people would probably find shocking about just making their even small investments than what we already know?
When I just started working, I spent 2 years attending seminars, reading books, and I was looking for the secret to wealth. I really wanted to become rich.
Everybody.
I have read books, I have attended all kinds of conferences, and after all that adventure, I was disappointed to learn that there are no secrets. It is just the simple disciplines that we do every day that make the difference, whether one is going to progress in life or not. And specifically, when you talk about wealth creation, it is the basics: delaying gratification, living below your means, saving by putting aside part of what you earn. The most disappointing thing is that these things are very easy and simple, but they are not exciting. We want exciting things. Have you already brought a cryptocurrency guest? Before you go to cryptocurrency, there are all these big assets and big ways of making money. But before you reach there, it is good to sort these basics. For those who have sorted the basics, they work all the time. The other thing is that progress, wealth creation, one is a discipline, but is also a factor of time. Many people suffer loss because they are looking for get-rich-quick schemes. Unless you're a thief or you're lucky to inherit your parents' property, if you're going to be as rich as your father or your mother, you probably need as much time as they did. You're not going to achieve what they achieved in 40 years in 2 years.
And be like that. Can we now, like...
That is what creates problems. You just have to learn patience to know that this is a factor of time. We have a forum at church where we've put aside about 10 million shillings to help young people want to go into entrepreneurship. Now, this is money that has been collected by
congregation.
Not the congregation, actually, these are professionals who said, because God has blessed us, let us also bless. One of the disappointing things about it is that the intended audience is not very enthusiastic because there is a process. The money is not just going to be dished out. They are required to write a plan, but people don't want to do that hard work. No. They just want free money. And that is the trap I see, that many people have the seeds of success, but they are not willing to put in the time and the hard work. And they will lament. There are many lamentations we hear. Even in our own nation, people will say, no, the economy is bad. But I've seen foreigners come here and prosper. And when I say foreigners, I'm not talking about Americans. I'm talking about Kenyans, Nigerians. So it is easy to say that, oh, the government gives these people tax holidays. But I'm talking about ordinary foreigners who are not on tax holidays, but they've come and they are putting in the work and they are prospering while we are looking on. It definitely tells us that there are things that sometimes do not add up on our part.
Speak more to that. What are those things that are not adding up? Because you make such a powerful statement. Maybe it also speaks to the fact that you spoke earlier that we are comfortable. Yeah. What is annoying about that? You especially seeing the young generation, because 20% of our generation is still under the age of 30.
I think it's just the love of comfort. And in our modern day, there's a lot of easy comfort. Growing up, for me to be entertained, it was a struggle. But now entertainment is just on your phone. Data is cheap. At 1,000, 2,000, you can buy some data, entertain yourself. So there are many distractions that are facilitating comfort. In the end, if you take that path of least resistance, then you can only complain how things are not working out. To address that issue, I'm not blind to the fact that there is bad luck. There are people who have tried maybe even to find a job and failed. There is that. But I also see that to a great extent, we are not applying ourselves to pursue the opportunities that are open to us. And I say it, I am an employer. There are people whom I have employed and they have left because they feel that I am making them work hard, which I find very strange. When we say working, not that I'm torturing this point, it's just demanding them to think, demanding them to apply their minds, and somehow they don't want. So those are the things that I see are a liability to our generation. And unfortunately, you see, our parents survived that. For them, they were competing amongst themselves. But in this generation, this podcast is competing at a global scale, because the people who are watching us have many options. It's not like previously when we only had UTV, UBC. You were just competing to get people's attention there. As a young person, you have to realize that even as you compete for opportunities, you're competing at a global scale. Whatever it is that you do, whatever your talent is, whether you are an influencer, whether you are into marketing, whether you are an engineer, remember that now you're competing at a global scale.
Yeah, this applies to everybody, because in my 9 to 5, I have a communications agency. And I remember one of our business coaches, we had a training, and the gentleman started with his perception of his country. They were from Switzerland. And he said, well, this is our country. It is cold. It is mountainous. It is hard to reach. They mentioned all these things about their country. And then they put Uganda. Uganda has fertile soils. The climate is perfect for
Flat.
Everything is possible. And since then, it just opened my mind to the possibilities. And yes, Switzerland is one of the richest countries in the world. But in comparison to what we have, we actually are swimming in just a sea of impossibilities. So you're absolutely right. I like that you bring it home, especially with just the rest of the foreigners, not global, but just local Africans here, that they come here. We see all these mushrooming hotels. It's amazing how much they're doing, even without these tax holidays. So I think that was a great insight for the patriots. So thank you for that. And I still think there are some patriots who are thinking, but me, a young person, I don't need to be patient now. Because when you're probably younger, 20, you think 30 is too far away. It will come. Why do I have to invest now, today, when I'm 20, as opposed to when I'm 30? Even myself, while I was 20, all I cared about was probably enjoying a good time with my friends and going out, and not thinking past where I was.
The answer to your question is what we call the power of compounding. When you look at compounding, it starts off slowly and keeps building momentum. That can be money, that can be knowledge, that can be experience. I have a very dear friend of mine, is a well-established investor in this country. Well, we're in the university, for him, during the long holidays, he would fly to the UK, do cheyo, get money. For us, we thought that this guy just enjoys hustling, he just enjoys maybe having money. But many years later, now I see the power of compounding. That yes, we all started working, but he started early. So that is why you need to start early, is that early start is an advantage when it comes to compounding. A person who starts saving, even if it is 100,000 every month at 20, by the time they are 26, even if me I start at 1,000,000 shillings every month, for them they already have a head start. So why do you need to start early? Is that you compound. But even knowledge, many people don't realize that knowledge compounds. If you see people who read a lot, if you are an avid reader and you've read all these books and articles, every additional article you read just compounds the knowledge you have. So we can all read the same article, but because of the prior knowledge you have, you're going to derive much more benefit from it than me, who is just beginning. On that account alone, the earlier you can begin, the better. For those who are 18 years or even 16 or 17, you're even in a much better position. Because when you're young, the thing that works to your advantage is your youth. Young people do not have much, but you see, their youth gives them time and strength. So there are many things. There are many older people. They have a lot of wealth, but what a young person has that they do not have is that the young person has strength. And
time.
if you're 80, if you're 75, you can still do a lot, but there is not much future for you to work with as opposed to a 25-year-old. I mean, the world is still open to them. The only problem is that now the older people have wisdom. Many times young people lack wisdom because they are not benefiting from the wisdom of the older people. When we were talking about mentorship, being handheld by an older person, you can imagine if you compound your youth, your time, and then you get wisdom from an old person, you're dealing with a phenomenal.
Yes, absolutely. We have all the time, but we don't have the money, and they
Yes.
have the money. I see that you'd be a dangerous subject if you had it all. But maybe that's why we're not given all, just so we are managed.
No, I take it that that is how God operates. God created us for community. No one is self-contained. The president of this country is definitely powerful. But you know that our president is not a doctor. It means that when he's unwell, as powerful as he is, he will have to sit before a nurse. They will even tell him, pull out your tongue, do what. So that is how God has created us, that we need each other. It's actually not a liability that you don't have everything, because that is what helps us synergize. Yeah. Patricia brings what she has, Elijah brings what he has, and then we create impact. Even the fact that when you're young, don't look at the things you do not have as a liability, but they are an invitation for you to partner with the people who have those things so that you can contribute to the things where you're strong. Again, in a family setting, if your parents have idle land in the village, for you, you have strength, you have time. For them, they have the land, maybe they are now weak. You use your strength to make that asset more productive.
My mother would love you. Even just started the conversation with a prayer, and you have some aspects that you bring to a conversation, even just patience alone and having a value system and doing things based off of what you believe in. I think it's nice for young people to take into perspective. Now that you talk about our parents, I'm sure a lot of our parents would like for us to be involved. Every now and then you hear moguls or rich people who pass away and property is passed on to generations. However, they're not able to make it profit or prosper, and this is your line of work. I don't want to ask you what you have seen for our patriots to paint a picture, but where do you think is the gap that the parents are not aligned with the children who inherit this kind of investments?
Actually, if we are to spiritualize it, it is a curse. Because if you look at the last verse in the Old Testament in the Bible, that is the book of Malachi, it talks about the prophet Elijah, and it says that God will send the prophet Elijah to reconcile the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers, or else the Lord will strike the earth with a curse. So, whenever you see a disconnect between the young generation and the older generation, it is a manifestation of a curse. Because the way God has designed life, you're where you are because your parents sacrificed and invested. So that connection is what enables us move from generation to generation. But now, specifically to the question you've asked, a reconciliation of hearts, because one, I have seen instances where a successful coffee farmer has grown coffee for decades and has educated all their children using that coffee. But what are the children studying? They are all studying law, psychology. And you're asking that, how is that law and psychology going to help the coffee farm? Maybe on the part of our parents, it is being strategic to guide. You can't force the children, but the children need to see that our bread and butter is this farm. How do we take it to the next level? It is very common with the Asian. You go to our famous Kakira, there are many generations of Madivanis who have been running it. So there's something we need to learn from that. But also it is incumbent on the younger generation that instead of you going to just study random things, do an assessment, look at the possibilities you have in your environment and say, what knowledge can I gain to add value to this? One of the things that I find very disheartening, for example, I don't see a lot of investment in agriculture production in Uganda. Yet that is something that we have. I would think we'd have like 5 universities of agriculture, things like that. These are resources that we have in abundance. But because of that disconnect, it is very easy for a young person to say agriculture is for old people. It is not modern. Yet the right thing is that for a young person, because they understand the modern world, they are the ones to bring our agriculture into the modern dispensation. Yes. Our parents are not going to think of using drones in a farm. But a 25-year-old can actually think and conceptualize and say that, yeah, we have all these acres of land. How can I make it more efficient? And they are going to incorporate technology because technology is natural to them. Yeah. So that is the reconciliation that needs to happen.
If you think about it, a lot of people, they're here in Kampala, but they have land bare in the countryside. And we've been told also here in the podcast that agriculture is quite expensive. So I can imagine why not. But that shouldn't stop us, shouldn't limit the investments that you're talking about in agriculture. And it's quite nice to think about it, especially when you're talking about it. Sometimes we take them for granted, but it's nice hearing it from you who's always engaging with these people. You said earlier it's our mandate as individuals to be more intentional on how we invest, on how we do it in terms of policy recommendation. Is there limitations within the ecosystem? You have noticed that if something is done, can help this young entrepreneur invest more, take the leap to start earlier. Are there things that you see that you know elsewhere it's working well, but here it's still a bottleneck?
One of the challenges I have seen in our ecosystem environment is generally financial capital is difficult to get. When you have a young person, that is one of their biggest bottlenecks. They have all these ideas, but where do they get the startup capital? And yet, I also know that there is a lot of money in this economy. I have some unit trusts. I attend AGMs of all these unit trusts. And every year they are growing by leaps and bounds in trillions. But this money is of ordinary Ugandans. And why is it in unit trusts? It's because there are some incentives for us to invest in unit trusts. Why can't those incentives also be extended, for example, to people who invest in young people? So let's say if an investment club got their money and maybe lent it to a startup, what incentives are we giving them for that risk? In the end, for us to grow as a nation, we have to take risks on each other. Of course, the assumption or the hope is that the people whom people are taking risks on are trustworthy. But again, the examples we've given of foreigners who have come, I know that many Asians, many Chinese, the reason that they are able to prosper is that within their ecosystem, either the government or they pull resources together and they are able to take those risks. So I see that is an area that we need to clearly think about. And these are low-hanging fruits because the money is there, but how it is channeled to these opportunities is
Some
what
still don't believe that the money is within. We've had comments telling us, but But where is it? Some people still don't believe that this money is within.
There's actually money within. It may not be a lot, but there's money which can do something. I think the bigger challenge I see is that money chases vision. You'll see that many people will tell you that the vision is the most important thing, because when you see people who have done great things, many of them didn't have money. Even these billionaires we celebrate, the American billionaires, the Chinese billionaires, most of them didn't start with the money.
Yeah.
They started with the vision, with the idea. Because of the laziness we talked about, especially the intellectual laziness, that is what makes the money not be there. But I can assure you, when you come up with an innovation which people see is the next Google or the next Apple, you'll be the one telling people, now I have enough. So I think the challenge also to us, the young people, is we need to conceptualize things that will attract the money. And the beauty is that don't look at the money in Uganda. I know Ugandans who are being funded by foreigners because they've come up with great ideas. I actually have a friend who has had to relocate to the US because the people wanted to give him money, say that we don't trust where you are, you come. So even if the money is not in Ntinda or Naguru where you are, remember that you are operating in a global market. Yes. So if there is no money in Uganda, there may be money in Nigeria or Sri Lanka. You get it as long as you have an idea that is worth that money.
I think that is the lock. That is the lock. Your investors may not be here, but think more global. Open it out. That's always nice to hear. A lot of people tell us, broaden your perspective, think out of the box. But I like how simple you put it, that anybody is able to understand it from where they are. Now we have the very last phase of this podcast, and it's pretty much about achieving a middle class economy, but we do the fun stuff, and we're going to look right into the camera. And we ask 2 questions, and you have to just share the first 3 things that come top of your mind. So you alluded to most of them. What are the things we are doing now that we need to continue doing because they're going to help us achieve the middle class economy? And what are the things we're doing right now that are not good? They're not taking us anywhere. We need to stop them today because we want to achieve the middle class economy with them. Okay, let's go.
So the things that we are doing well, I think there is good investment into infrastructure, into education and health, so that government spending on making the country better, making the people better is a good thing for where we want to go. That is one. Yeah. The other thing which I think we need to continue doing is pursuing regional integration. Just like we said, it's not good for an individual to work alone. It's also not good for a country to try and prosper alone. So that regional integration of working with other countries in Africa, in East Africa, I think is a good vision, and it will take us forward.
Wonderful.
The last thing that we need to concentrate on as we move to middle income status is also seeing how we learn from others. Some people look at it negatively, but it's not a bad thing to invite and other partners who have made it.
We don't have to reinvent
We
them.
do. Again, those partnerships are very important and they need to be encouraged.
Wonderful. You're big on collaborations. Huh? The last one, the 3 things that we need to stop today because they're not taking us anywhere.
So the things we need to stop, one, the way we do our politics in our country is very pathetic. Our politics is really now just about eating. There is no vision in the way politics is done, and I see that that is a snare for our progress.
I think that's a bigger question, but we'll come to that in another time.
In another time, yes.
Yeah, but we get the gist of it.
The other thing that we need, which I've already addressed, is just a sense of We need to stop being laissez-faire. You see it on our roads, you see it everywhere, everyone for himself, God for us all. That is not taking us to middle income status. We need to do away with that high level of indiscipline as a nation.
Someone said, the way we drive here in Uganda, everybody just cares for themselves. Don't care if anybody else is on the road. But yeah.
It actually frustrates me daily. So we need to do away with that. And then the third thing that we need to do away with is, I will just call it generally, ignorance. And what I mean by ignorance is that there are all these plans that we are pursuing as a nation. It's like everyone is handling bits and pieces of it. If I walked into a P3 class at Uganda Road Primary School and asked them, what is our vision as a nation? Can they say it? We need to be galvanized so that we are all moving in one direction. Actually, sometimes I think that the indiscipline is because of that. We don't know where we are going. Everyone is guessing. We need guidance. The plans are there, but I think the concerted effort to make it a national project. So that is not just the president's project or the National Planning Authority, but it is a national project. Even my grandmother, who may not articulate it in English, can articulate it in our local language.
That speaks to the saying that goes, we identify more to our tribes than we would to the country. Oh, where are you from? I'm from Ankole. But Ugandan should be top of the list. I think that was really thought-provoking. I think we all have to do some homework now. Go back to the drawing board and go back to, as father than your parents, have a discussion with your parents. And also you personally as an entrepreneur, as a business person, as a professional at your workplace, think deeply about your intentions on just tackling life and later on investing to also prosper your investments. So thank you so much, Mr. Elijah, for making time. I really honor your presence. So thank you for having made time and also continuing to mentor people, because you could have said, this one was a junior and now she's here inviting me, but I'm really privileged that you made it today.
Thank you for having me and for the insightful discussion. You're a very good host.